I have a small favor to ask that takes you literally a few seconds. If you like the first 100 podcast and the guests that we have invited so far, can you do me a small favor and give us a thumbs up on any podcast platform that you are listening on? It helps the podcast more than you think, because the higher we go on the ranking, the more interesting guests we can invite. Thank you again for your support.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Broadcasting from around the world, you're listening to The First 100, a podcast on how founders acquired their first 100 paying customers. Here's your host, Hadi Radwan.
This podcast is sponsored by All-in-One, the premier fantasy sports site that is on a mission to bring all sports fantasy games under one roof. If you are into football, the Euro 2024 is coming soon. Head to www.allinone.rocks. That's www.allinone.rocks and register for free for the first Predictor Game. You can create free leagues, invite and compete with your friends, and show your prediction prowess. May the best team win. Good to have you on the show, Karim. How are you doing today?
Very good. Yourself?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for joining the podcast. Karim Helal is the founder of ProTenders, which is a platform for construction companies to build their online reputation, find the right partners for each job, get new leads, and streamline all their tendering activities. Essentially, you also service architects, engineers, contractors, suppliers to help them in their journey for the digitization of the construction lifecycle. And I'll leave you to explain more about ProTenders, but you bootstrapped it all to 29,000 businesses in 105 countries. And this is just an amazing feat since it just started in 2015, so not a very long time ago. Karim, take us back to the early days. What inspired you to start ProTenders?
Thank you first for having me. So the answer is that I never actually wanted to start a tech company. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. My dad was one of the first architects in the UAE. He came to the country in 1968, so before he was even a country. And so we effectively grew up in his office. In fact, so one side of the floor was his office, one side was our apartment. And now I always was like, I'm never going to be an entrepreneur. It's too much work. It's too much hassle. Never going to do it. Did that, went to Canada for 15 years to study, worked for a few years in corporate, hated it, did my MBA, did a few things over there, and then came back to the region when my father passed away, took over his business. And as a consequence of that, being the only non-architect in the whole family, I was handling all of the operational stuff. So marketing, biz dev, operations, everything else. And one of the most annoying / expensive / time wasting activities for us as a company was tendering. It was taking us sometimes more time and more money to actually get a tender for a project than designing it. And I can't tell you how expensive it was. So we basically tried to find a solution for us to streamline our processes, and we couldn't find one. It was either Oracle, SAP, or very basic solutions, or we had to build our own effectively. So we ended up building our own. So that effectively ProTenders started off life as an in-house tool for our firm to streamline our tenders. But the way the construction industry works is very collaborative, right? In the sense that we as architects had to tender our projects for our clients, the landowners. And so as a consequence, you had to invite contractors to the platform for them to be able to bid on the platform. And so we also had other projects working with other big developers. And so we basically opened up the platform to whoever we were working with. And it really grew that way from an in-house tool to something that more and more people were using within our ecosystem. And that was the first wave of it. So it became quite big within Abu Dhabi, which is where we started off. Whereas the biggest bank in the UAE in Abu Dhabi was using us to streamline all their tenders in Abu Dhabi. So effectively around 80% of all the buildings in that particular city ended up using us. The real next step, and when we officially launched the platform as a separate business, was in 2015, where two things was happening. Three things. One is I wanted to get out of the family business. I wanted to separate life from business from family. Two, a lot of our developers were starting to build more and more outside of the UAE. So they're starting to build more and more in Saudi, Morocco, Egypt, Vietnam, Europe. So the question, they were coming to us and saying, well, do you guys know the market? Who would be the right consultant, contractors, suppliers to invite on in these particular geographies for us to work with them? And the second side was all the people looking for contracts, looking for jobs, whether it be consultants, contractors, suppliers. Because we were close to the developers, came to us and said, well, you guys are developers. Who do you think would have the right projects for me to go and try my services or my products to? And so what we ended up realizing is that the tendering was a good base, but the much bigger opportunity was how do you connect the right people for the right project? Knowing that you inviting the wrong people for a project might end up costing you a lot more in the long term. And if you think about it, we met with LinkedIn, right? When I hear somebody for the first time, I'll go on LinkedIn, see who he is, what he worked on. And construction is very similar because construction is very much of a reference game, i.e., what did you do? Who did you do it with? And for who did you work, right? So being able to find companies based on what they did, what kind of work do they do, how experienced are they in a particular geography or a particular type of building was extremely important, and you couldn't find it. And so the consequence was, well, let's take what we have, spin it out, and build on top of that the whole LinkedIn of construction, which is how we started the whole journey of combining both sides of having a very powerful platform to streamline tendering and bidding, coupled with a very high volume and very wide tendering or LinkedIn for construction effectively.
Amazing. It's a great story, especially when you're piggybacking on an existing business. You have your reputation as well, so people can join knowing who's behind the platform. After you've exhausted probably the first few people that know about you and the importance of the platform, how did you start scaling it up? And I don't know, when was your first 100? Was it immediately? Did it take a few years? Take us back to that moment, please.
Sure. So effectively what happened is we were in a bit of a pickle because we tried fundraising. We couldn't fundraise because we were in a sector that was deemedly unsexy, construction tech. And so we had no choice but to really go creative and to how to scale. So we effectively had two things we were selling. On one side, we're selling the tendering engine, which is something you sell to developers, which is a relatively high complex sales process. On the flip side, we now have the profiles, which we were selling. And the question was, how do you go from being a very enterprise type company with a very niche solution to something which is much wider? And so what we ended up knowing that we have no cash, right, to actually spend on marketing. So what we ended up doing is, by sheer luck, we started talking to a few of the media companies. So I started the first 6 months populating our database through scraping databases, entering data, whatever else, to get some kind of initial seed database. What we ended up doing after is going to see all the media companies that specialize in construction. And the pitch was, you guys have editorial content on construction. We have a database of projects. Let's find a way to collaborate. And the idea was to try and use their leverage or their reputation for us to tag along. So one of my strategies in growth typically is find somebody who's bigger than you, who's way bigger than you, and find a way to collaborate with them. Like find a way to ride their wave until you and benefit from their wave to take it to the next step. And once you've reached the same wave as they have, find a bigger wave and then keep on jumping on. So we ended up basically partnering up with one of the largest media companies in the Middle East called ITB. And they had a magazine called Construction Week Online, which was, again, one of the most known magazines for construction in the region, but they were trying to add a database of projects, companies in their website, and it wasn't really working. So we spoke to the editor-in-chief over coffee, said, yeah, it sounds interesting, proposed to add something. So over the weekend, we worked on this small snippet that we could add within their platform, which is whenever they would mention any article, past or present, a company name or a product name or a project name, it would automatically find it in a database and add a small hover underneath it, which means that anybody reading it could go and hover it and see the basic stats of this company, who they are, what they do, and so on and so forth, which will give the readers more insights into who the company was and will give us more visibility. Because effectively then we would automatically within one day become visible to over 400,000 readers a month, right? Which was a massive boost for us. And so we ended up proposing it. They adopted it. I remember a Monday morning, we presented it, they liked it, they implemented it. And that particular snippet lived there for the next 2 years. So for 2 years, whoever was going to see them was directly coming to see us also, right? And then we used that as a way for us to generate tons of inbound leads, which we then convert into more and more customers. And then we ended up expanding the platform to more and more features. So initially it was the company profiles. Then we added to it the marketplace for suppliers able to list their products. So that became the next thing. And then we ended up having so much data about construction that we could sell data to people, right? So we became a central platform where people can either get themselves found, see what's happening in the market, connect with the right people, go and bid on projects, or eventually sell their own products. And it was all because of that particular one snippet that we did with ITP that enabled us to really scale up massively. And one of the rules that we have is you try and cater to every part of the ecosystem. So today what we do is we sell, actually even from the beginning, you have different services, different modules, different products that cater to different sides of the ecosystem. If you only have developers, then we would never have reached 100 customers because, again, they're very hard to sell, very enterprisey, and very fragmented. Whereas the much easier path to success is going for all the smaller people that are desperately trying to get data. And the pitch is, well, we can get you more leads, more deals. And nobody will say no to getting more business, right? So that's kind of how you play on both sides. On one side, we help the big boys buy better or do more with less resources, so be more efficient. And on the bottom, all the people looking for jobs, we help them get more leads and get more business. And it's this combination of being able to play on both sides of the equation that really helped us scale massively at a very low cost. Because again, we've been bootstrapped. We haven't raised money so far.
Amazing story. I mean, I'm in this.
I wish I could say it was genius, but it was really all through coincidence and through pure sheer luck. We just happened to react to it.
Absolutely, but it was the right strategy. You were there at the right time, and there's always gatekeepers. My follow-up question is: there's always gatekeepers for going after the right partners, which sometimes block you from pursuing that opportunity. Is there any tips or advice you would give our listeners if they're pursuing a partner? How can they get away from these gatekeepers or through those gatekeepers to the right people?
So listen, in my perspective, and there's two types of things. One is if you have gatekeepers, you're probably not talking to the right person. Find a way to connect to the right person. And that's going to be the person that has the most interest in your solution. For example, in our case, we used to go see first the head of procurement. And for obvious reasons, it wasn't really going very well because they were not interested in a solution that would make everything more efficient. It changed when we started going to direct to the head of finance or to the CEOs because they're interested in trying to do things more efficiently, quicker, better, whatever else. So that particular side of the story for us changed the whole dynamic, right? On the other side is knowing your market very well, understanding the pain points, right? So if you come in as a pure tech solution that doesn't understand their concerns, they won't look at you. But if you're able to express the key benefits they're going to get, so again, whether it be savings or cost or admirability or doing more with the same amount of people, right? If you send the right message to the right person and you bypass those gatekeepers, then you're probably going to be able to close. And one thing that I've learned is never be afraid to cold reach somebody. Most of my conversations that have been the most productive have been me by picking up the phone, calling somebody straight up, telling him who we are and going to see him. Okay? So if somebody's trying to block you, just go above him, just go around him. I mean, there's no point trying to sell something to somebody who doesn't have an interest in your solution being implemented.
Makes a lot of sense. What lessons have you learned on your journey, especially that it was challenging? It's bootstrapped, which is harder usually than when you have money. Any lessons learned along the way that you could share with us?
Listen, I started out here, man. This is how long it's been. Listen, so the one thing that I've learned is being the first mover in any industry is extremely difficult. We were way too early with what we were trying to do. It took us a very long time to get to a point where where that kind of solution is accepted. And so because of that, we've been bootstrapped, right? So, and then the good thing is that now finally we're in 2024. It's finally becoming a tech sector, right? So the rule of the game for tech in our part of the world anyway, is you have to be resilient enough until you become sexy. If you're not tech today, then eventually you'll become. You just have to be able to survive long enough till that happens. So it's really a question of every single morning trying something new, trying new customers. You're going to get thousands of no's, but just keep on going, man. It's a question of resilience. Effectively, whoever is the most resilient wins in this particular game. And two, trying to be too diversified. So at some point we try going to the States, we try going to the UK, we try going a bit everywhere else. It doesn't necessarily work unless you're able to fully commit to it, in the sense that you can be at the same time a Middle Eastern company and a European company. It doesn't work. You don't have enough capital, enough time to actually be able to do everything. So pick a geography, stick to it, focus on it. Even if you have gradual, very linear growth, which was in our case that you had, just keep on doing it. And at some point, whether it be in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, people will start seeing the value in what you're doing, and you'll become impossible to beat, because by that point, you would have had all that time where you've had a massive advantage over anybody else, right? So today we're in 2024 and contact is booming, but yet there's nobody doing everything that we're doing as a complete solution, right? So because we've had 7 years of us doing it. So yeah, consistency, just keep on going, just keep on innovating, just keep on trying to find creative ways to build. And one more thing, I wish I had credit in anything that we've done, but literally everything we have in the platform today is a consequence of us listening to customers and what they have and their needs, and basically being very close to them. So everything we went from day one to where we are today is every single line of code, every single feature is a consequence of conversations with our customers, whether it be developers, suppliers, contractors, consultants, or manufacturers. Oh, we could add this, or we could add that, or how about we do this, right? So this is how you go step by step, is by giving actual value to actual people, helping them do their work better, right? It's not sexy, it's not glamorous, but it's the slow and steady wins the race.
Makes a lot of sense. Hindsight is 2020. If you go back in time and you have $5 million in funding, what channels would you have focused on for scaling growth faster than bootstrapping the slow way?
So the one thing that we did at some point is I splurged into it is events. I know it's, again, not very sexy, but in our industry, marketing doesn't do a big thing. The one thing where everybody goes to meet and everybody goes to go and try and sell is few big events that happen every year. And so one year we actually did take a bet. I spent $200,000 out of my own money to actually go and test it out. And we didn't take a small stand. I don't believe in small stands. You either go big or you go home, right? So we effectively went and took the biggest stand that we could right at the entrance of the exhibition. Everybody was against it, but we still did it. And to this day, 4 years down the line, people still remember that us at that particular event, right? So I don't think the 5 mil is required at our industry, but I think we would have done quite a few more of those massive events. Because again, that creates repetition, that creates people seeing you every time, it puts you in a different image right off the bat. The second thing that we would have probably done is expand geographically much quicker. Because again, our market is quite small. I mean, we're in the UAE today. And the thing is, construction is a very cyclical industry. It goes up and down on a regular interval, right? And so by you being in more than one market, especially across the region or MENA wide or a few key countries, you're able to navigate the ups and downs of every country because they all happen in parallel. While the UAE might be going down, Saudi Arabia might be going up, or Egypt might be going up, or I don't know, Morocco might be going up. So you have to be able to navigate those ups and downs by being geographically diversified while being within a region which is small enough for you to be able to operate and understand the key factors that influence every sector, right? So for us, between the US and the Middle East, it's too big of a gap, time-wise and culture-wise. Whereas UAE, Saudi, UAE, Egypt, UAE, Morocco, UAE, even Turkey are close enough for us to be able to understand the intricacies and operate the business, right? So that's something we would have done a lot quicker had we had the money for it.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing the story. I mean, you mentioned early on that you didn't want to be an entrepreneur. You went the corporate world and then you became an entrepreneur. For those listening who are at the point where they don't know if they should do that switch between staying in their corporate world or moving to taking a risk, because it's full of risk being an entrepreneur, what are certain triggers or flags they should look for to see if they're ready to do it? Is there any advice you can give? I know it's very hard to pinpoint when it's the right time, but at least things that people can look for.
I don't think it's specifically hard in a sense that at some point, if you get the itch and you don't scratch it, it'll keep on itching until you end up doing it, right? It's really a question, though, of you putting most or optimizing your chance of success, right? And for that, it's very important to understand the ecosystem you're in. What are the key drivers behind it? What are the chances of you being able to succeed in the ecosystem that you're doing, right? So again, big lesson to entrepreneurs, don't do what I did. Worst possible decision, starting something way too early, right? It doesn't mean that you should only do copycats, but there's particular trends that are in every country, and you focus on those. If you want to become a bit more innovative, then you maybe want to go to the US or Europe, where there's more acceptance for that kind of business. But two, of course, it's a question of finding the right partners for what you're trying to do. Because again, we started off, we were 3 founders. 2 of them left within a year. One got married and had to find a job. One got divorced and wanted to travel the world, right? So it was an interesting combination of things. But find people that are very close to you, have the same itch, have the same mandate, have the same vision of what you're trying to do. And yeah, just start building. I mean, one more thing that I would say is if you do start building, find yourself a way to surround yourself with people that are much more experienced, that have seen it before. So one thing that I do a lot of, and I do between 5 and 10 hours a week of mentoring, specifically to try and support people that are starting off on their journeys. Because like it or not, I mean, I've done every single mistake in the book, and I'm actually quite proud of it. And so it's a question of if I can help somebody else do one less mistake, I'm happy with it. So find people that are there to support you, to guide you, to ask you the tough questions. If a mentor doesn't challenge you, it doesn't scare you, then you probably shouldn't do it. Or if you get scared at the first meeting, then don't do it, because it's not an easy road whatsoever. It's a very, very lonely road, very aggressive road. And again, you have to have the mental strength and persistence for you to do it.
Makes a lot of sense. It reminds me when I started becoming more of entrepreneurial, because I was working with PwC early in my career. So that's a desk job. You're sitting there behind your screen. You don't interact with a lot of people. But when you become an entrepreneur, you have to actually become a salesperson. You need to actually face rejections, be familiar with the rejections, and embody it, because that's, as you said, it's more of a learning rather than a reflection of your effort. So one of the things that I did was go to a Dunkin' Donuts store and ask for a discount. And it's impossible that like a company like McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts give you a discount, or Starbucks, but at least it prompts you to accept the fact that people might say no, and it doesn't have to do anything with you. That's a
100%.
personal story.
It's that. And also, honestly, one thing that you learn throughout the years is never be afraid to ask questions to anybody, because like it or not, and I think it was at some point Steve Jobs who said it, if you ask somebody for something, in most chances, they will actually try and help you. Like, people generally are here to help, right? So most people are afraid to go and ask for favors or ask for questions or ask for things. As long as you're not here to just try and go and tell something, like always frame it as an advice question or trying to get some insights. People generally do want to help. So yeah, negotiation, and don't be afraid. Just go and ask.
What is the principle that you live by that has served you well in your journey?
Again, I'm a big believer in helping others in community. So the reason why I do a lot of mentoring is, of course, for 2 reasons. One is because you want to help others not do same mistakes. But 2, every time that you ask questions or that you mentor somebody, you learn as much as you give, right? So, I mean, again, you see a lot of mistakes that you would have done that they're going through. And then by having this conversation, you end up having it. So I'm a big believer in this sense of community, in supporting each other up, in with people that are here for your best interest. There's a lot of scammers in this ecosystem. Whoever is asking you right away for money, equity, shares, run away from them. People that really want to help will do it for free in most cases. So find those people, talk to them, sit with them, have coffee with them, be nice to them. But otherwise, just don't be a dick, man. Sorry for the language, but try and do the best work you can, and try and be good. So again, no cheating, no anything else. I think like my father always used to say, it takes a lifetime to build a reputation and one day to destroy it. So you live and die by your reputation, in a sense that people know who you are. So especially in business, be straight, be direct, be honest, and just keep on doing what you do best.
Amazing. One last question, Karim. What's next for ProTenders and Karim?
A lot of things. So a lot of things. I can't really announce them yet, but there's a lot of things happening. We are taking the next step of the journey, you'll see it very soon. But we're announcing something quite big in the next couple of weeks.
Perfect. Karim, thank you for joining us and sharing your amazing journey. How can people reach you, and are you hiring?
We're always hiring. I'm always here to help anybody who's looking for support. So feel free to reach out to me. There's my LinkedIn page. I live and die by LinkedIn. So feel free to connect with me. Go there. There's my link tree. There's a few links there. Reach out to me, ask for help, ask for feedback, ask for questions. Always happy to connect.
Perfect. We'll put all of this in the show notes, and we wish you the best of luck on your journey.
Thanks, Adi. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to The First 100. We hope it inspired you in your journey. If you're enjoying the podcast, Please subscribe to our podcast on Apple iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or Spotify, and share it with a friend starting their entrepreneurship journey. Leave us a 5-star review. Your support will help spread our podcast to more viewers.